I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, degenerate sleuths of the night. We gather to boldly go where others have refused. Welcome to the DT show, you salty mofos.
A man accused of killing 4 college students is behind bars, and he has ties to northeastern and central Pennsylvania. State police say 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was arrested this morning at a home in Chestnut Hill Township.
I can't find any case law that would support that idea. That somehow a warrant would be needed for DNA left at a crime scene.
We are expecting to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-Team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
So, the Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel.
So, get your popcorn ready and your choice of drink. Get your butt on your seat. Like, comment, and subscribe for a treat. Here we go. It's time for the show. The Drunk Turkey Show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Hope everybody's had a fantastic weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, especially my own, and to my wife, who is a mom for her second consecutive year now. So happy Mother's Day to everybody else, and to those moms around the world. You guys are a blessing and amazing. Welcome back to the show. I want to say thank you to everybody that is tuning in. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. You guys know what to do. Before we get into it, I got a few folks that I want to say thank you to. We have Martha Moore coming in, becoming the newest Drunk Turkey membership, and also Midwest gifting a Drunk Turkey Show membership. Thank you guys. Appreciate you guys so much. Well, there was a Dateline episode that dropped on the Idaho murders not too long ago, and a lot of breaking news, stuff that we've never seen before kind of populate and pop out. And today I kind of want to go over majority of what that stuff was and kind of give you guys an insight a little bit about what my thoughts are on some of the things that came out. I told people a while ago that this guy looked like he was idolizing Ted Bundy, especially when his alibi came out that he was somewhat at Walleye Park, or at least at some point at Walleye Park. The same location where Ted Bundy has been rumored to have started his reign of terror, with that being the location of the body of Joyce LePage being found. And back in the 70s, and Ted Bundy was a suspect at one point. He was even asked if he committed the crime. Now, he denied it. He's no longer alive, Ted Bundy, that is, but he denied that he had anything to do with Joyce LePage, which, some of these guys will lie. Some of these guys will tell the truth. Manipulation and controlling the narrative is key for some of these folks like this. You know what I'm saying? So you got to take what they say with a grain of salt. But he claims he didn't have anything to do with it, but he was in the state of Washington at the time. And the way she was found and discovered does kind of seem to match some of the MO as far as her being a sorority person. I think in the manner she passed was also somewhat similar to how Ted Bundy would dispatch his victims. And so I called this out a long time ago. I know a lot of people gave me a little flack about it. saying that no, Ted Bundy didn't commit that crime. There's evidence that it wasn't him, blah, 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 blah. And my thing was, I'm not necessarily certain it mattered if Bryan Kohberger or if Ted Bundy committed the crime for Bryan Kohberger. It was, did Bryan Kohberger know that? Did Bryan Kohberger think he did? Well, we found out in this Dateline interview, and we're going to go into it a little bit more in detail when we get to that part. But there was a professor that wrote about Ted Bundy at WSU, and Bryan Kohberger was not too pleased with her. You know, whether it be maybe he had a disagreement with whatever she was writing, or maybe he had a disagreement with, you know, her thoughts on Ted Bundy, or maybe even victims, or who knows what it was. But he belittled her and did other things like that. And so kind of makes you wonder, right? Maybe he had his own ideas about what Bundy was and is, and maybe he thought, you know, Bundy was, you know, if he was idolizing him, maybe he did think he did commit that crime. And maybe there's more to this story. Now, the broadcast starts off with a couple of selfies, right? This is the first one that it starts off with. And they go into more detail throughout the documentary of where these selfies come out and when they matter, right? But these selfies come out, and the next thing that pops up is who's the target. And they believe that it is Madison Mogen who's the target in this documentary. A lot of the reason being is because they're saying that Bryan Kohberger went straight up to the third floor. Now, I agree with that Bryan Kohberger allegedly, the intruder for sure, went up into the third floor. However, the door to Kaylee's room was left open throughout the entire night. Now, one of the things that we do know about the MO of this intruder is that they like to leave doors open. And, you know, none of the doors were closed, including the back sliding glass door. Now, we know that it was left open throughout the entire time that the crime was ensuing. And so we know that because Murphy ran outside and he was barking, and they were able to test that Murphy was outside barking during the time that these crimes were happening. And at the same time, there was the thud and the noises that you can hear from Xana's room. So you know that back sliding glass door was left open. So is it possible that Bryan Kohberger allegedly went into that house and maybe went first to Kaylee's room, opened the door, and she's not there, turns to Maddie's room and finds her in that room, if she was the intended victim? I think they have it right with Madison Mogen. You know, they talk a little bit about Ethan's injuries and the extent that he goes a little bit further. He ends up carving, is the term that they use, carving his legs. I'm assuming this is post-mortem, just because there's no sounds of him screaming or any of those type of things. Now, maybe perhaps, you know, they did show an image from outside of the house looking in, and that you could see blood splatter, and they attributed that to a swift one strike with the knife to an artery. Now, if that artery was in the neck and the throat, and it took some time for him to die, then yeah, he may have been carving into his leg while he was alive, and you know, he just couldn't scream. You know what I'm saying? Because obviously of the blood. And I hate to be graphic and things like that. You know, my thoughts and prayers are out with his family and all their families. I'm sure hearing something like this, or knowing that happened to their loved one, whether it be their brother or their son, from the Chapin family, is it's probably horrific. And so I don't know if it was post-mortem or not, but he ended up carving Ethan's legs. He did something more and extra to Ethan than he did to Xana. And we've all heard from Steve that Maddie and Kaylee also had different injuries, which Kaylee resulted in more injuries and a different type of injuries than what Maddie suffered. And so is it possible that he displayed more ferociousness, displayed more aggression on the maybe perhaps the two individuals that ruined, and I put that in quotation marks, ruined, I guess, his fantasy by being there? You know, maybe he wanted Maddie, took out his anger on Kaylee because she was there. You know, it sounds like he chased down Xana, but she was a female, and now there's a man there. He's upset that the man is there laying down. And so those two things come into play. So I just wanted to bring those up before we get started. But they go into saying that they believe that Maddie was the intended target. And the other thing too, there was an Ashland Couch who was on the lease, and she was apparently supposed to be in that house that night. And because of her mom changing some plans, she ended up having to stay and dog sit at her mom's house, which prevented her from being there. And I couldn't imagine the horror that she's going through too. The survivor's guilt, the emotional roller coaster of losing your friends in that manner, and then also knowing that you were supposed to be there. I couldn't imagine that. It's been so hard on her. She's not been able to return to the area since, and so it's pretty tough for a lot of people. All right, so let's see. One of the things that comes out in this documentary is that Howard Blum is in it all over the place. He was used as a person with sources. In my opinion, he was used because he knew quite a bit, and I know he's come under quite a bit of fire here recently, especially because of an airmail article with Dr. Ramsland. But and I'll address that now here. So in that airmail article, he mentioned something to the effect that Bryan Kohberger's motive was targeting or maybe some sort of interest with Dr. Catherine Ramsland, his DeSales professor, who has written books and interviewed and talked with high-profile serial killers such as Ted Bundy, such as BTK, and others that she's spoken or written or both about. And several others. Ed Kemper's another person that she has mentioned and that she's spoken with, etc. So if we were to look at BTK, right? We'll look at BTK. He contacted the media. He contacted and what's the word I'm looking for? He pushed. And he wanted to prove that he was smarter than people by contacting the media and law enforcement. And that ended up being his downfall, mainly because he thought he wasn't going to get caught, whatever the case may be. But the purpose behind his murders weren't to contact the media, wasn't to try to stump everybody, wasn't to try to, make fun of, or not even, maybe that's a different term that I'm looking for, but dig at the police that they couldn't catch him. I don't think that was his main motive. His motive it was sexually frustration, a bunch of other things, right? He was a psychopath and a bunch of other things. But a part of him reliving the crime, a part of him or an added bonus to it, so to speak, was trying to prove that he was smarter than everybody by leaving clues or whatever the case may be, even creating his own name, BTK, so that way he can control that narrative. He wanted to control all the narrative. He wanted to make sure what was written about him, his name wasn't stupid, a bunch of different things. And all that stuff was just like an added part to the crime itself. The Zodiac Killer, same thing. He would send out information and puzzles to the media. The reason why he was committing the crime wasn't so that he can go out there and intimidate or make fun of, or whatever the case you want to call it, out there with the media and people out there in law enforcement. He had, his main motive was something else. Same thing could be here with Bryan Kohberger. I don't think his motive strictly was Dr. Catherine Ramsland, but if he is who we think he is, which is a person who thinks he's smarter than everybody and looks down upon women, wouldn't you think that him contacting Dr. Ramsland before and after the murders, even if it's something to the effect like, here are some clippings of this crime that occurred. Are you aware of this crime? It may not even be words or conversation between Bryan Kohberger and Dr. Ramsland. It just may be the articles themselves. And, could that be an attempt for him to think that I'm going to stump her? I'm going to outsmart and outwit her. She's not going to figure out it's me. But she has to know about the case first and foremost. So he's sending it out. Now, as far as Bryan Kohberger and Dr. Ramsland being in contact since his arrest, I have no idea. And I spoke with Howard Blum. He's going to come on the channel tomorrow. He'll be on at 11:30 Central, 12:30 Eastern. I think that's about 9:30 in the morning on the West Coast. He's going to come on tomorrow. We're going to talk about everything, including Dr. Rams. And he's even in his Twitter, he said, "Hey, they didn't conversate. I must have got that wrong." After his arrest, and he apologized for that. And he said, "Hey, there's some things that he may get wrong sometimes, but they're not on purpose. And most of the time, there were minor details in the whole picture of the entire thing that he's putting out there is mostly accurate." And so, we have a tell-all interview tomorrow, and he's going to come out. He's going to explain himself. He's going to talk about Dr. Ramsey. He's going to talk about this documentary and so much more. But I don't think it's impossible, or that it doesn't exist, that Bryan Kohberger was trying to insert himself into this case by contacting those that he knows investigate these type of crimes, the high profile investigators. And maybe perhaps he's going to he was trying to prove he was smarter than everybody. It seems like somebody that's narcissistic would have those thoughts and feelings, and that's why I think maybe even the K-bar knife being left behind could have actually been on purpose, because he thought he wasn't going to get caught. But Howard Blum is in here. He's in here quite a bit. So let's go through some of the timeline. There's a picture on June 25th, 2022. This is Bryan Kohberger leaving Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and heading towards Pullman, Washington. And then about 2 days, I think it was like 5 days later or 3 days later, this is when he's at his apartment there at the Steptoe Apartments in Pullman, Washington. You can see one of those deals there, the shipment box for all of his stuff to be shipped out there to him. So he needed one of these, right, to get to Pullman. When his dad and him take off, it don't sound like he packed up one of these type of shipment containers, right? So I don't think he was planning on not going back. I think, I'm sorry for the double negative, I think he was planning on going back to Washington. Oh man, I didn't have the picture in there, my bad. So there's a picture of Holly, and I think this is interesting. So they talk about an incident that happens at the Grove, and this is on July 9th. Bryan Kohberger goes out to the Grove, and on this day he meets Holly, and with Holly he puts his phone number in her phone, and they talk about hiking. And the next day he sends her this text message, says, "Hey, I'm pretty sure we spoke about hiking trips yesterday. I really enjoy that activity, so please let me know. Thanks." Right. At this party, one of the things that I've noticed is that Dateline said that they have clips, they have video of people at this party. They've talked to a number of people at this party. And what they've also mentioned at Dateline is that they have no idea when Bryan Kohberger and the victims crossed paths. So that means they weren't on those clips. They weren't in the stories from those of the people that have been there. I don't believe that they were at this party. But Dateline goes on to say that starting that night, July 9th, the night of the Grove, is when Bryan Kohberger drives by for the first time on the King Road residence. And so something happened either before, after, or around that time. Now, I'm not sure where the Grove is. I probably should have looked that up. I know it's in Moscow. So I don't know if maybe perhaps he went to a Winco, or he went somewhere right after that and ran into them and followed them home, something to that nature. But I excuse me. But I think that for sure something happened on that day. I just don't think it was the pool party. Dateline has no problem bringing out a bunch of information. I highly doubt that if they had somebody say, "Yeah, we saw Kaylee there," or "Maddie was there at the Grove," or whatever the case may be, Xana and Ethan, that would have came to light through Dateline. They have clips, pictures of people at the party, the whole 9 yards, and yet still nothing. Now, he does meet and talk to a guy named Zach, who is a DJ. Now, Zach talks to him a little bit, and Bryan Kohberger doesn't get the social cues of that he needs to, like, all right, he needs to go to work. So he kind of brushes him off there. then he talks about how a few months or a few weeks later, he's going up Kamiak Butte, and he's coming down the mountain or the hill, and it's dark, and that's why him and his buddies are leaving, and they run into Bryan Kohberger, who's arriving at the hiking trail late at night. So the guy liked to be out there real late at night, obviously wasn't afraid of the dark. And so that doesn't mean he's a quadruple homicide murderer or anything like that, just because he likes to go hiking at night. Just something that was interesting and of note, that he likes to be out there by himself. Now, one of the things that I thought of here, especially since Bryan Kohberger likes to go hiking at night, is if he would have been out on a hiking trail with her, it would have been very easy for him to do something. So signals very low out there. You're isolated. There's not very many people. Cameras are very low, very few and far in between. You probably have people taking pictures on the trail and stuff like that. And I know there's some cameras at entrances of places, but there's not cameras inside the trails that I'm aware of. And so, like, if you're walking up somewhere and there's like a little ledge or a little decline or steep decline, there's nothing there that can say that somebody didn't trip and fall or somebody got pushed, those type of things. And so I really do think she's saved herself by not responding to Bryan Kohberger here, as far as Holly goes. But yeah, Zach says he ran into him and that he acted like they've known each other and they were best friends. Those type of stuff. So interesting things. Now, one of the things too that I noticed is that they said that between July 9th and the mid-August that he had visited the area within 100 meters of the King Road residence 12 times. A dozen times is what they said. I mean, that's 12 times in a month. That's quite a bit. I mean, that's 3 times a week. And it kind of seems like it slows down a little bit, and then it probably picks up again towards the time that the murders happen. And so this is probably some sort of indication that he really ran into somebody and really started to grab a fixation of this person. Then he starts Googling Ted Bundy, and when he Googles Ted Bundy, he misspells it. Right? He misspells Ted Bundy. And this is on August 16th. So on August 16th is when he's actually Googling Ted Bundy. I think it was like 2 hours before this picture is taken. This picture is taken and posted at 5:19 p.m. All right. So 5:19 p.m. photos taken 11 minutes late and posted up 11 minutes later. Police are knocking at the door. All right. So what does this tell you? What does this tell you? I think this could say quite a bit. I mean, I think this guy, if he was stalking or surveilling, let's use the proper terms. If he was surveilling, I think that there's a good chance there's a good chance here that he was the one that called 911 on this. Now, remember, Steve mentioned that in our interview, he said that there was one person that responded to Bryan Kohberger's Reddit survey that reached out to them. And this person said that what his MO was, he would call law enforcement on loud parties and things of that nature. And when people would get dispersed, or if they arrested anybody that was too drunk and acting stupid, whatever the case may be, the guy would break in and steal some things. Now, part of his robberies, or details of the robberies that he would mention to Bryan Kohberger was that some of the women who, that he broke into were asleep. They weren't clothed. They were drunk or high or whatever the case may be, especially if it was like a party house type of thing. And so, he was really calling back to talk about those type of stories with this Reddit survey man, and that he was getting off on it. And so I find it kind of odd that on August 16th, 5:30 p.m., 11 minutes after they post up that picture, cops are there. Now, I took this is a still image. This is law enforcement walking back from the 1127 King Road residence. So here's my assumption. Somebody called 911 saying there's a loud party going on the King Queen Road intersection. And so they pull up here and you have two parties. You have the one on 1122 and you have 1127, and both are on two different parts of the block, right? A little bit separated by about probably a football field. Now, they pull up to the first one as you're pulling in, which is the 1127 King Road, which is also Jack DeCore's house. Now, I went and looked, and lo and behold, there's this car here. Now, initially, I thought this car might be a little bit too squared. But then there's this picture of this car. And I'm like, I know it's a different angle. The angle of the dangle is a little bit different here, right? This one's straight ahead. The other one's a little bit more at an angle. But I couldn't help but notice that they both look kind of similar. You have a elongated headlight here on the right, an elongated headlight. There's something in the center. Here we go. You got something in the center here. They go opening. Now, again, this is angled off a little bit. So if it was straight ahead, this cut right here probably isn't as prevalent. And also, I think this is taken at a much greater distance. But you can see right there where it's a little bit lighter over here on the right side, as if there's a fog light. And both cars are missing front license plates. Now, there does look like there's something right here missing, which this is Bryan Kohberger's car, and this is what it was before the license plate. As you can see, there's this chrome thing right here, kind of blocking or interrupting. You can kind of see it here too. It's a little bit right there. Again, pretty far distance away. So you can kind of see there's something right there. Something in the middle. You can kind of see the fin back here too. And so let's see. I don't know. At first, like I said, I thought maybe it's a little bit too squared, but when I pulled up Bryan Kohberger's car and put it right next to it, I don't know. Like I said, also the picture from the body cam is a lot further back, and so a lot of it is going to be pixelated more, and so things are going to blend in a little bit more. But it looks pretty close. But they could be different. I don't know about this one. This one could be different. But what I do know is, and this is at 1730, this one here looks a lot closer to an Elantra's back end. All right. So you have your taillights, you have a rectangular back window, you have this black part down here, two reflectors, rectangular window, you got the little black part on the bottom, you got your taillights, you even have a little line right here that looks like a reflector to me. Took a couple of images of it. And this is some body cam footage that might capture it a little bit better right here. And I got some better cam footage as well. Let me zoom in. So I took some screenshots of the body cam footage when the officer is standing in a couple of different locations so you guys can see it. The black part down at the bottom, you can kind of see that red reflector right here. And then right above it, or just a little bit above it, you have your taillight. Kind of hard to tell. I mean, obviously, this isn't something, and I think this is a pretty clear picture of it too. This isn't something that's going to be identifiable. I mean, I'm not going to be able to go in there and say, oh, yeah, it's a 2015 Elantra. But I think it's pretty close, you know. And again, this was all the same day that Bryan Kohberger had searched Ted Bundy, and then a 911 call is coming in. Now, Jeremiah sent me this. And if you look close right here, let me see if I can make this bigger. Right in the middle there, it does kind of look like there's a guy standing there leaning up against that white Elantra. It's right here. You can see the Elantra, and you see something right here. You know what? I'm going to try to take a screenshot of it. All right. And then I'll send it to myself and save it, and then I'll pull it up here in a minute. All right. I'll save that in a sec. But it kind of looks like there might be somebody leaning up against the car outside looking through there. I think for sure there looks like there's a vehicle back there.
The way I've always done it, and correct me if I'm wrong, was the way I did it there.
All right, let me pull it up real quick. Let's see. Let me pull up that screenshot real quick. Where'd it go? Did it not save? Give me a sec, guys. All right, there it is. Okay. You see the Elantra, and there seems to be something dark figure right in front of it. Now, I mean, there's a white car there for sure. I know this is kind of hard to see, but you know, this would be the vantage point that somebody would be standing at to look back there. And I want to say shout out to Jeremiah for finding this little piece here. Could be. You know, when I pulled up the 911, let me mute it. You keep your eye. Let me make sure I have this on a slower speed. All right, it's good speed. And so you're going to see up here in the corner, so people know that I'm not lying. You'll see it moving here in a minute. All right, so Kaylee's about to walk out. She's opening up the sliding glass door. Obviously, it doesn't look like it was locked. And also, there seems to be some dripping already back here, guys. So I don't know about that being blood. That's Hunter Johnson. He's the guy that is on the 911 call. He's the one that found the bodies, unfortunately. And you'll see also that white Elantra in the reflection here. I'm calling it an Elantra. I don't know if it's exactly an Elantra or not. I just found it super suspicious. And even Dateline brought it up. You know, they brought it up that after he searched these images, this picture got brought up. And then this call came out. So Dateline, to me, was kind of putting out something. So you can see the white Elantra there in the, or the white vehicle pulling up there. Now, if he called, let's just say, let's put this in perspective. If the guy, let's just say it's Bryan Kohberger that called 911. If he's calling 911, and he's going to position himself where he can see what's going on. He's wanting to see the subject of his, you know, idolization, whoever he's fixated on. He wants to see them. He wants to see them walk out. He wants to see what they're wearing, whatever the case may be, right? And so he calls 911, but they go to the back door. And so you have to position yourself in a different place, and you'll be able to see here in a sec where it looks like it's moving the car. I hope I didn't go too far. I may have. It's back there. I think I may have gone a little too far. I know I have it here. Let me pull this up. Bear with me. Where did it go? Well, there you are. Just letting it load, do its thing. Hopefully it don't take too long. See, right here in the center. See right there. You can also see the back tail, like you can see that this vehicle, the rear window has that angle like an Elantra does. You can see that it's moving too. It's moving into position there. Let me back it up a little bit. Let me slow it down. It's right here in the middle. So yeah, I broke this down earlier, guys. I don't know if you guys saw it. For those that did, I think it's it. I think that's it. I mean, I could be wrong, but I strongly suspect that could be it. Now they go on to say, so that was, what day was that? That was the August 16th. And then a couple of days later, this is September 1st. So about 2 weeks later, this is when the other 911 call comes in for a loud party. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, nobody in the house was there. I don't think that's necessarily true. Nobody in the house above the age of 21 was there. Nobody in the house, like for instance, Bethany, Dylan, even Xana. I don't think they're coming out here at this moment because they're under the age of 21. They're drinking. They're intoxicated. So Maddie and Kaylee, they were out and about. So this also could be a reason why, like, for instance, the whole 911 call not happening, etc. You see a little bit of that. But here, I strongly suspect that some of the girls from the house are in the house. They're just not coming to the door because they're underage. But this is on September 1st. August 21st, he gets pulled over. They put that a little bit out of order. So August 21st at 11:40, he's getting pulled over. He gets a citation for not having a seatbelt. He was just out there at the victim's house for about an hour, within 100 meters from the house on August 21st. We know that from the PCA. And then 5 days later, on August 26th, and look at the time, 2:16 in the morning, he's searching, when can a cop detain you? So what does that say? That's saying that this thing is stuck with him for 5 days. I mean, think about that. How many times has how many of you guys have gotten a citation where it's keeping you up in the middle of the night 5 days later? Just to kind of give you the idea of the kind of person this guy is, right? He doesn't understand why he was wrong. He's probably still pissed off about it. It's driving him angry. It sounds like he didn't want to give up his information, like his cell phone number and things of that nature, because he was doing things he obviously knew was wrong. Kind of comes back into the premeditation and understanding of what your actions are, right? So 2:16 in the morning, 5 days after he gets pulled over, he's making this search. Kind of says a lot about the guy, right? Let's see. Before we go forward, I want to say thank you to Tony D. Dang, Tony, $49.99. I didn't see that earlier. Thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate you. And you became a new member. Thank you. Thank you, Tony. Amazing. Thank you. Then they bring up Ko. Sorry about that. So Nayoung Ko is a PhD student also at the University of Washington. She is somebody, remember guys, I told you guys a long time ago, I brought this up. I freaking brought this up. And a lot of people were like, oh man, she had a, they would tell me Bryan Kohberger is not an incel because she had an Asian girlfriend. And I would say, yeah, and I'm pretty sure she's the one that made some complaints against him. And I even said, I was like, not everything starts off, crazy or red flags right away. It may have taken some time, but from what I understand, this person made some accusations. I said it a while ago. I said this so long ago. I think it was probably about 6-7 months ago, or maybe even longer than that, to be honest with you. But I mentioned it. And I said, this is a person who had some problems, and we find out what some of these problems are. So everybody heard the rumors that Bryan Kohberger befriended somebody and, broke into their house and then set up cameras for said person and then was watching them. Well, we got a little bit of an insight, right? So apparently Miss Ko's key to her apartment goes missing. When it goes missing, somebody goes into her apartment, and she had burnt the cake earlier, and they had put the cake in the microwave. Then they went into her bathroom and set up her cosmetics neatly in a row, on her sink and toilet. Now, she got freaked out. She lived in the same apartment complex as Bryan Kohberger, so she reached out to him. He happened to be awake, obviously, and she went and stayed the night with him. Now, according to Howard Blum and to Dateline, nothing happened between her and Bryan Kohberger, but that wasn't because she didn't want something to happen, apparently, allegedly. I don't know how true it is. This is what the Dateline made it seem to allude. So don't come after me, Miss Ko, if it's inaccurate. But, Dateline made it allude that she was interested in Kohberger, but Kohberger was pushed back at the very least. He would push back against it. And nothing happened the night that she stayed there. It sounds like nothing ever happened sexually between her and Bryan Kohberger. And so she ended up bringing it up to Bryan Kohberger's attention that she didn't know where her key was. And then after she brought it up to his attention, it materialized in a drawer at work a couple hours later. And so she notified law enforcement about it. And they spoke of her thoughts, and apparently there was some things that were taken. One of the things missing was a watch and a letter, and these two items were items that Bryan Kohberger had known about. She had mentioned to him. So interesting stuff. She began to wonder, because Bryan Kohberger installed the cameras, if he had access to them, and sounds like he did. It's a horrifying, terrible thing. Yeah, just kind of want to let you guys know about that. But around the same time, though, that all this is happening and the break-in is happening, he's searching sociopathic traits in college students. Now, I said this when this came out from Dateline. I said, hey, this guy was well aware of who he was. He'd come to the realization, we could see it in his writings. He was aware of the mental condition that he had and some of the symptoms that he had. And, that was when he was a younger man. Fast forward 10 years, from when he was 18 to 28, 27 years old. And I'm fairly certain if he was grasping the reality of his conditions then, he probably well understood who he was at this point. And it sounds like to me he was trying to fit in. He was trying to be one of, the other folks. Maybe perhaps it was to fit in so he can become more friendly with people. Maybe perhaps it was trying to not stand out when a murder investigation was about to start. Because if he's out there and something happens like this, people are going to ask questions. People are going to talk. People are going to say, hey, there's this quiet guy, Bryan Kohberger, that talks down upon women, those type of things. And we find this out during this broadcast, actually from Maddie's boss, worked at the Mad Greek, mentioned that she had worked at, I guess, some kind of clothing aspect of it as well, and that some of her other employees were students at WSU, and that it was well known at WSU that Bryan Kohberger had problems with females and female professors, especially one that wrote about Ted Bundy, and I guess he didn't agree with. But sociopathic traits, he does another search about psychopathic traits and stuff like that. And my first thought was, well, now this makes sense. This makes sense why the defense does not want the state and wants to limit the state on the use of terms. They're using the term sociopath or psychopath. Remember, that was something that they were really harping on. They're like, we don't want the state to use these terms. And I think what they're trying to do is blindside the state into trying not to be able to use certain parts of evidence such as this. Now, I do think that this will end up being used in evidence against Bryan Kohberger. I understand that the judge ordered it to be that the state not use these terms, but that if the term was going to come up, if the door were to open, that they could have a hearing without the jury, which I think they will. And they're going to talk about these specifics because, the defense is going to look at this and say, hey, he's not, even though he has got a master's in psychology, I believe. That's the other thing too. He's got himself a master's, right? But he's not diagnosed. He's not diagnosed. So I'm sure you can't diagnose yourself with something. So I think that's going to be their argument. You can't diagnose yourself with something. But their argument is he's not diagnosed. So you can't use this against him because he was asking the question about himself and having questions about his mental aspect. But I think that this is exactly what the defense was trying to do. They're trying to blindside the state into not allowing them to use certain evidence relating to certain searches that he was making and to handicap and cripple the state's case. I don't think it's going to work. But I think that's what they're going for here. So that, and look at the time too. I mean, this is September 30th, 2022. I wonder what day of the week this is, because this is at 1 o'clock in the morning. Remember, he worked as a TA, and so let me I'm going to actually look. So we're looking at September 30th, 2022. What day of the week was that? I'm going to look that up real quick. And that was a Friday. So Friday morning, I don't know, obviously you usually work or got class or something of that nature going into Friday. I don't know his schedule. Maybe he had Fridays off, but that's a Friday morning, so Thursday night going into Friday morning. October 4th at 6:12 a.m. He's searching other women at WSU. And this is around the time that he's having the, I guess, pushing back from Na-Young Ko, I think is what her name was. I apologize if I got it wrong. But they bring up that while this was happening with Miss Ko, that Bryan Kohberger was looking at had a bunch of women that were saved to his phone, some from WSU, some from the University of Idaho, some very close friends to some of the victims. It is unsure if he had any of the actual victims on there, and I have no idea if he did or didn't at this point. But Dateline doesn't indicate. But 6:12 a.m. on October 4th. What day was that? What day of the week is October 4th? Let's see. Day of the week. That's a Tuesday. So, I mean, he's probably up getting ready to go to work, or maybe he never went to sleep. October 5th. So 3:29 a.m. That's Friday. He's doing some more searches and looking up other women from WSU and places. October 9th at 2:15 a.m. He's making Google searches. I believe it was for Ted Bundy again. October 14th. 4:32 p.m. This is when he gets pulled over. Bring that up. And then 5 days later, he's looking up, can psychopaths behave prosocially? So he knows and he's aware of who he is, in my opinion. Very well aware of who he is. And making those searches. And then he searches himself. October 19th, he Google searches Bryan Kohberger. What could he be looking for? I guess he's looking for that identity that Dr. Vona talks about quite often, right? November 1st, takes this photo of his vehicle without a front license plate. No front license plate, in the snow. Big old feet. You can see this where he's walking. And that was November 1st. All right, November 10th, he stops using his debit card. Whereas prior to November 10th, he had regularly used his debit card. So he's probably, purchasing some things so that nobody can, locate him, whether it be he's going to nearby restaurants, so the Mad Greek, or, purchasing things in stores that he's going to use for his kill kit, and he's hoping that it doesn't trace back to him. He also, and this is on November 11th, he begins to use anti-forensic methods to clear his system at school. See, I mentioned that, and I mentioned this early on, especially when we found out that he was driving around Nevada Street. I said, this guy probably had a lot of searching and doing a lot of those type of things while he was at school on a public type of network, logged in there. It's probably harder to trace and find like who was on those IPs, etc. Versus if it came back to his house and his router. And so it sounds like he probably did do that, and it sounds like he was trying to hide whatever it was that he was doing online at his school. November 12th, Kaylee posts up this photo and they bring this up. And they talk about, the documentary goes into the pass-bys that the vehicle is doing. And it talks about November 6th, and it goes into this this video of the footsteps that they took of Bryan Kohberger's alleged footsteps that he took that night. And it's very similar to the things that I've been saying for a while. I believe that he opened the back sliding glass door, left it open, went up to the 3rd floor, attacked Maddie and Kaylee. Xana woke up, maybe perhaps because the back door was open, felt the draft, maybe perhaps because she heard the thumps or the noises coming from the 3rd floor. Whatever it is, she starts to go up the 3rd floor and comes back down running, saying there's somebody in the house. Bryan Kohberger chases behind her. There's a moment where they face each other, and he says, "It's okay, I'm here to help you." Give her some sort of false sense of help or false presense of safety. And then he attacks her and then attacks Ethan. We find out at this part that he, carves into Ethan's legs, and then he takes a seat in a bedroom, in a dark bedroom, in a bedroom chair, and that he leaves an impression of blood. It's weird, right? Like, because there's only a short amount of time that he was in there and could have been, committing this crime. And for him to sit down, I don't know for how long, maybe it was just a brief moment, a second, just took a step back, sat for a second, breathed in, got up and got out, those type of things. But this has been circulating as the potential chair. As you can see, this where the door is right behind them, these young ladies. And we can imagine that right there where they're sitting is probably around the area where Xana's body was found. The vehicle leaves at a high rate of speed, and they say in the documentary that he almost hits somebody. I don't see anybody standing out there or anything like that. It does look like he almost hits a fire hydrant or a car parked on the opposite side. Maybe that's what they meant by that he almost hit somebody. It was the car, but I didn't see anybody out there. Now, they do talk quite a bit about some phone calls between Bryan Kohberger and his father, starting at about 6:17 in the morning, I believe, with Bryan Kohberger calling to his dad. The first call was like 20 some odd minutes. The longest call was like 54 minutes, all happening between 6 and 10:30 in the morning with Bryan Kohberger and his dad. Now, to me, I think this was to set up some sort of doubt in his parents' mind and his family's mind that he could have committed this crime. No doubt in my mind, they're probably well aware of the problems that they've had with their son for some time, and how he acts and reacts, etc. And so a crime happening in the manner that it did, I'm sure he was aware that people have Ring camera and that they may have captured something in, as far as a description of a vehicle. If it comes back to his parents, he wants to implement some doubt in their head that, hey, I called you guys that morning. There's no way I could have done this type of thing. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it was all part of his manipulation to his parents, those phone calls. But spend a significant amount of time on a Sunday morning talking to his dad. I'm curious, when did his dad decide that he wanted to go to Pullman and drive his son back all the way across country, right? If that happened around this time, it's an interesting thing, right? Interesting thing. I wonder when they decided, when Michael Kohberger decided he was going to fly down to Pullman, Pennsylvania to drive his son back. But 2 days later, guys, 2 days later, on November 15th at 4:34 a.m., that's an interesting time, right? 4:34 a.m., 2 days after the murders. I mean, if you think about it, so that's actually, it's 48 hours from the murders, right? Because the murders happened on November 13th at this exact same time, right? But let's recount what Bryan Kohberger was doing. So after the murders, this is when his phone turns on. His phone turns on. He's near Blaine, Idaho. He's driving around, doesn't get back home till after 6 or close to 6, like 5 something. Then we find out he's making phone calls with his daddy, and he's spending a lot of time talking to Papa. So he ain't falling asleep, right? He's not taking a nap. He's not doing any of those things. Then he goes back out to the scene, right? Goes to the scene, 9 o'clock. Then he comes back home, and he takes a shower and takes this selfie at 10:30. He's talking to father. Then he ends up in Clarkson, Washington, about an hour after that screenshot. About 11:30, he's in Clarkson, Washington. Going buying some things, doing some other stuff. Still no sleep. And then according to the PCA, on his way back home to Pullman, he turns his phone off in Johnson, Washington, around the area where his phone was off the night before. And he's out with his phone off in that wooded area and doesn't get back home, and his phone don't turn back on until he gets back home in Pullman. And that's about 8:30 at night. Right. And so the next day he calls in sick. The 14th, calls in sick from work. We know that he's probably sleeping from everything that he's done. To me, I also don't think you go and do everything that he did, because we also didn't even talk about what he did prior to or leading up, right? I mean, apparently he was making searches and doing things at 8 o'clock, according to the documentary. He was up and about. He was not asleep throughout the day on that Saturday. He was doing searches. He was doing things. And one of the things that they talk about is that he was doing a search, and around the time that he was on the interweb, Kaylee is, putting up that picture of her and Maddie on her shoulders, saying, these are the best people in the world, and basically alerting everybody that she's in town. So he's not asleep. He's not like waiting for this to happen. He's up and about all day Saturday. So when was the last time he slept prior to that? You know what I mean? Friday night. And so November 14th comes around. He calls in, and in the middle of the night, as the 14th turns on to the 15th, so about 2 hours, 48 hours later after the murders, only maybe 12 hours after he's woken up, probably, he's searching for another K-bar knife. Once you put it into context, that tells you a few things. One, it tells you that trip that he took out there to Clarkson, Washington, and he got back, that 13th, going on to that next day, probably destroyed a bunch of things. Probably a lot. That's where he threw the knife away. Probably in that river. It's probably somewhere in that river. right? So just to kind of put into context, November 15th, 4:34 is the first time that he's searching for that knife again, for a knife. Now, is it because he knows that he left the knife sheath behind? Maybe. Or maybe perhaps he's ready to do it again. He wants to do it again. He had other pictures of a lot of other women on his phone. So November 16th at 9:16 a.m. is the first time that he searches University of Idaho murders. Now, I don't know if he searched Moscow murders before that. It sounds like he had prior knowledge. And, you know, my interview with Steve, he mentioned that there may have been a search, you know, murders in Moscow or something of that nature. But according to Dateline, the first time that he searched University of Idaho murders was November 16th. And then after that, he's searching Ken Maines, I think is his name, Unsolved No More. I actually enjoy Kevin Maines, I think is his actual name. I enjoy his breakdown and analysis. He did a wonderful job on the John Benet Ramsey case, in my opinion. I've seen many of his work. He's in Pennsylvania. He's a Steelers fan, just like me. Hopefully I can get him on the show one day. But he did a documentary thing on Ted Bundy being the perfect killing machine, and lo and behold, Bryan Kohberger's watching it. Remember when I told you guys about that Wall Park alibi, and I thought he was paying homage, and I got a bunch of crap for it? What do you think now? What do you think now, knowing that he was searching Ted Bundy so much? I think there's something there. And so this was November 18th at 12:16 a.m. So in the middle of the night, searching up Ted Bundy. Later on that day, he gets his license plate. Look at those shoes. You notice something about that shoe? You see that line? No, maybe they're Nikes. Maybe they're Vans. I don't know. But he's taking a picture with his new Washington front license plate. He's had his old picture without it. He's now taking it, and it's in the middle of the night. So this means that, you know, he went out to the DMV, got his license plates, whatever the case may have been, and he waited to the middle of the night to put them on. Wonder what else he was doing in the middle of the night. Probably washing the crap out of that car. Yeah. I mean, the line comes up. There's a line here. It is dark. Could there be a dotted line that goes around here? If there's you can't tell. Obviously, this picture was taken at night, and so there's going to be a lot of detail loss. But I looked up these Vans shoes, and the only ones I can find that are similar to these have this white line that goes around them. But you can see a white line here. So there's a good chance that maybe perhaps, and it's not all over the place, there's a good chance that maybe there is one. It's just hard to tell the difference. November 22, 7:08 p.m. He's looking again at K-bar knives. This is just a week after the murders. You know, one thing I did notice is that when he's in Pennsylvania, he's not looking at K-bar knives. I wonder if it had anything to do with those two stops. Maybe that scared him a little bit. You know, I think maybe perhaps the only thing that was preventing him from purchasing these knives beforehand is he was aware he left the knife sheath and people were looking at it. I think around this time is when a lot of reports were coming out that a knife sheath was found and that law enforcement were looking into places for purchases of fixed blade knives like K-bars. I mean, that was running rampant around this time. Everybody was aware of that a week into it. And so maybe that's why he stopped, and also why around this time he starts looking for a way to delete his account activity. So I think those two things come hand in hand. The fact that there was reports that law enforcement was talking to places looking for this type of knife, and now he's looking to try to delete this account activity. I don't know. I don't remember if he actually searches for K-bar knives again after this. I could be wrong, but I don't remember. If he did, it's in here. A screenshot all the times he searched, but I'd have to go forward a little bit more. November 27th. Look at this picture here. This guy look high as hell or what? Like I said, I'm fairly positive that he's that this is that he's high as hell. You know what I forgot? November 21st. You're right. His birthday was the day before November 22nd. It was November 21st. He's looking to buy another K-bar knife. Celebrate. This guy looks high as hell, man. He looks high as hell. His eyes, one eye looks like it's looking out to the right. Eyes don't even look the same size. Like the eye part, like it could be because one eye is kind of cockeyed, but they don't even look the same size. One looks darker than the other one too. Wonder who he's taking these pictures for. November 28th, 11 a.m. Echoes of Ted Bundy. And I bet you he's getting off on the fact that there's Kaylee and Maddie and on an article, on a video about Ted Bundy. You know, he mentioned an alibi of being out there at that Wawa Park. I wonder if his intention, if maybe perhaps if Maddie wasn't, or if Kaylee wasn't in the same bed, if this would have been like a kidnapping, an abduction, and something to that effect. Maybe he was planning on going out there. November 30th, he's Google searching his name. I think he's kind of worried, right? I don't know. Maybe because of that whole K-bar knife thing, right? He might be getting a little bit worried, but he's searching his name. Oh, you know what? December 6th, he searches K-bar knives again, but doesn't buy. So I told you guys if it was in here, it was here. So I guess in his mind, a week has gone by. They haven't arrested him. They haven't come searching for him. They must not have found it. Whatever he did, whether it be purchase it through a gift card or whatever it may be, however he purchased it beforehand, it's not coming back to him. They're not capturing him. So he's like, shoot, I can search for it now. December 6th, search for a K-bar knife. December 15th. Now he's already on the road. He's on the road with his pops. It's 3 a.m. So this might be getting up early to go out there and get up and go. And this is how he starts his day. He starts it off with a song from Twisted Something of Another. And it goes, something is wrong with me. I can't be who I need to be. Something is wrong with me. Will it last for eternity? And if you listen to the song, I listened to this one earlier, and it's it talks about having somebody struggling with mental illness. And again, very, very, this guy is well aware, self-aware of his mental problems, in my opinion. December 21st, he's back in his WSU black sweater, black beanie. Another one. I don't know why, but I just can't help but think that this is taken at night. It just seems like it's dark. You can't see, you can't tell, obviously, but it just, I don't know why. It just looks like this is a night picture. And then he's looking up another video of Ted Bundy. This is the video. And then he posts these selfies. And I think he was getting ready to do something again. I think he was getting ready to commit another crime. Good observation. So Michelle goes, 0 sleep equals not 420. It's true. So I noticed that the hood was very shiny. To me, it's starched. The material is shiny. He wrote about certain materials to wear as a crime scene investigator to not contaminate a scene or to take a scene with you. I think he was getting ready. Look at how thin he was again. Remember that picture he took? And I've said this. I thought maybe there's a correlation between him getting so hyper focused on doing something that he doesn't eat. And there's been times where he's gotten very, very thin. And there's that screenshot or that selfie that he took the morning of November 13th after the murders. He looks extremely, extremely thin. And now he's getting extremely, extremely thin again. And to me, it could be a situation where he's fixated on something or someone. And this guy's not eating. And again, using is probably a big possibility. It's very pale. Look at the time in the background. I think it's either 1 or just before 1, or it's either about to be. It's got to be 1. Because if this was the little hand, I guess it could be 12:05 or somewhere around there. It's 11:53 p.m. And then he's Google searching, and this is just before he gets arrested. He's Google searching, or he's listening to the song Criminal by Britney Spears, a slow down version. And the part that they highlight says, he is a villain by the devil's law. He is a killer just for fun, fun, fun. Terrifying stuff, guys. Let me go through my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything that I want to bring up. One thing I do want to add, that secret hearing that he had with his with the lawyer, with state of Idaho, that just recently happened, ended up being something to do with his medical history, and they're going to have the state talk to him. I asked Chloe, who's my legal advice person on the show, I was like, if Bryan Kohberger were to admit to something while he's there, can that be used? And she went back and forth with some debating, but in the end, she thinks that it could be. So I think that it'd be interesting if Bryan Kohberger, in the midst of his evaluation, somehow confesses. That would be amazing. All right, I'm just going to kind of want to read through here real quick, see what if I missed anything that I wrote down. Dateline did not know when Bryan Kohberger came in contact with the victims, but they do know that it started on the night of the pool party, that he started traveling to King Road. Now, I mentioned this earlier. I know there's a few people here before that wasn't here earlier. I don't think Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, or Ethan were at that pool party. Reason being is in the Dateline, they mentioned that they had clips, pictures, and they spoke to a lot of people, and they have no idea when Bryan Kohberger made contact or came across or cross paths with the victims. They just know that between July 9th and mid-August, that he had gone by the residence starting that evening 12 times, a dozen times. And then they say between then, mid-August, and November 7th, it's 13 times. So you have all of September, October, and November. I don't know how many times in between there that, or when it started. Maybe he stopped for a little bit and then he picked it right back up. Don't know. But those were the things that they kind of made essence there. Let's see. Now, we do know, according to Steve, that Bryan Kohberger had allegedly driven by the property and a few times without his phone on, and that he's on camera for those times. Let's see. Now Young Ko lived in the apartment, the same as Bryan Kohberger. Missing letter and watch. We went over that. I know I have some things here. The Maddie's boss mentioned about complaints about Bryan Kohberger from after he was arrested. There was apparently some other employees that had known Bryan Kohberger. Maybe that's how they know he was never there. I don't know. But apparently that she had some other employees that went to WSU and that Bryan Kohberger had an issue. I don't know why the image didn't come out, but there was a professor who wrote on Ted Bundy that Bryan Kohberger had some issues, and he was belittling her because she didn't speak very well English, because I don't think English was her first language. Let's see. BK's phone touches the victim's house 3 times the first 2 weeks of October. All after dark. I forgot to add that. So in the first 2 weeks of October, Bryan Kohberger's phone is in that 100 meter vicinity 3 times in the first 2 weeks of October. They did notice, they did say in the Dateline that the family did notice things change in Bryan Kohberger, especially his sister. And they do also confirm that Bryan Kohberger told one of the cops that maybe they should get coffee. Didn't another serial killer say something to that effect? Wasn't there also another serial killer who would drink coffee with cops and would hang out with them? Wasn't it like Ed Kemper who did something like that? You know what I'm saying? I thought he hung out with cops and talked with cops and wanted to have coffee, et cetera, et cetera. I think Ed Kemper was like that. And then wasn't there another one that said who else was arrested? And isn't that something that he allegedly said too? Just kind of crazy. Let's see. Gacy drank coffee with cops, and so did Kemper. Yeah, there you go. I knew it was a couple of them who did that. You know, this guy studied them. You're not telling me he didn't know these things? You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, to me, it's just, you know, his fake ass alibi, excuse my language, his fake alibi saying he was somewhere else, and talks about Wildlife Park where Joyce LePage's body was found. You know, anybody else arrested? You know, do you want to have coffee with me? Like all these things, you know, the searches on and it wasn't just Ted Bundy. There was Son of Sam was one of them. And then I think Ed Kemper was another one that he had that came up briefly, but Ted Bundy ruled the searches with Bryan Kohberger. Now I know the pro-burgers are going to say, well, you know, he's a criminology student, maybe perhaps that's what he was studying, but is Bryan Kohberger's defense team going to go up there and say, hey, during this portion of his life, that was the topic of discussion, Ted Bundy? You know, if that's the case, then maybe they got something there. You know, they can say, hey, that's what they're studying. That was their topic. That was the topic of discussion, was Ted Bundy. If it wasn't, and they were talking about, you know, something completely different during that time, whether it be forensics, maybe it be, anything. It can be one of a million things. Searches and seizures. I mean, I know he was he had a minor in psychology and a bunch of other things, right? But you know, who knows what part of their studies they were in at that point. And if it wasn't Ted Bundy or these serial killers, then his searches probably seem a little bit more nefarious, in my opinion, at least. Let's see. Yeah, it was December 27th when Ted Bundy watched The Essence of a Psychopath. And that's when he started taking those pictures. And the 29th is when he's listening to Britney Spears. Let's see. On December 6th at midnight, Bryan Kohberger is searching the K-Bar. And I think that's the last time he searches K-Bar. The next day, on December 7th, is the Bolo. I forgot to mention that. That wasn't brought up. I just remember that. Or maybe it was. I don't remember. But the next day, December 7th, was with the Bolo for the Wide Elantra. That was after the K-Bar search. Let's see. November 28th. That's when he was doing the Ted Bundy. And I think I've covered it all, guys, for the most part. I'll answer some of you guys' questions now. Please put a couple of stars. I'll go through here and answer the ones that have been starred earlier. I didn't get a chance to star a lot, so forgive me. I only starred a few while I was talking. Let's see. We have Sirius Black gifting 1 Drunk Turkey Show membership. Thank you, Sirius. And I hope you're having a great time, Sirius. Happy Mother's Day, and thank you for being a mod. Thank all our mods happy Mother's Day as well. I think now that I think about it, I want to say like 90% of our mods are moms. And so I want to say happy Mother's Day and to subscribers and everybody else too. Shannon comes in saying he passed up a nice girl to do what he did. That's crazy. Yeah, well, yeah, he is crazy. That's for sure. Did he have Maddie's ring on? I don't know. You're talking about that selfie picture? Let me go back. I don't think he has a ring on. I don't know about the other pictures of his. I don't see a ring on there. I don't know. Guy looks like a psycho. Thank you for your donations. GSU PM comes on with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate you guys. Steve G mentioned in your interview that we'll find out about the details of the victim's injuries. Do you have any idea when? Will it be before trial? When is the next hearing? What is the next hearing about? Probably not before trial. I don't think we'll find out that information, but I do think we will at trial. The next trial, when is it? I got to look that up. I don't know off the top of my head. What do you theorize that was the audio that have been able to decipher any words? So I've only been able to hear the audio that Dateline dropped. I haven't gotten the full audio or the full video from my source. And I really don't want to pressure the situation. It's a touchy subject, obviously. And so when I do get the full thing and I can go through it, I'll definitely share and talk about those things. But as far as what I could hear on Dateline, it sounded like somebody was hurting. It don't sound like somebody was screaming, or maybe they weren't able to scream, but it was a panicky sound, that I could hear. And dog barking sound very loud, like he was outside. Steph, all of the SKers, TB. Hold on, give me 1 second, guys. I'm gonna put you guys over here on the big screen where I can see and read this. I'm getting too old now. All right, all the SKers, TB has most Phileas present, which is academically he is the most important to study because catching them are all about Phileas. So it is must to study TB. Yeah. Steph says, I think BK knew what he was and knew only way to release his compulsions was to carry out his fantasies. I mean, maybe. It's just, he's a crazy dude. He's a psycho. Like I said, I don't think anybody's going to be able to come in and say, Bryan Kohberger, I don't even think Bryan Kohberger could do this. He's going to be able to come in and say, oh, I committed this crime for this reason, or whatever the case may be, right? I think it's a multifaceted issue. I think that, it's probably a sexually motivated crime, and I think that there's other facets to it. I think that when Howard Blum says that he was trying to impress his professor or whatever, trying to stump his professor, I think it's a possibility. I mean, what do we know about Bryan Kohberger? As I mentioned at the top of the show, from all accounts, he belittled women and he thought he was the smartest person in the room. And so if you had somebody of the status and influence of Dr. Catherine Ramsland, and you feel that, and he feels that he's smarter than her, and that nobody's going to catch him, I don't see why he wouldn't, try to stump her. Now, it's kind of like with BTK or Zodiac Killer, who tried to, what's the word I'm looking for? Man, I've been struggling with this word this entire show. I know what word I want to say. I just can't think of it. They were mocking the law enforcement. They're mocking the public, putting the information out there, right? Like puzzles or whatever. They didn't commit the crimes because of that. They didn't go out there. BTK didn't go and do what he did because he's like, oh, I'm going to create a riddle, or I'm going to stump law enforcement, or whatever the case may be. Same thing with Zodiac. The reason they did it was probably a sexually motivated type of instance, but to relive the crime, in efforts to get high off of the situation by having people talk about it and be stumped and confused by who or what, when, where, and why. Panic and fear driving into that. That's him and them controlling the narrative. And so when you have somebody like this, I would 100% see that he probably targeted Dr. Ramsden's class and things of that nature, just because he wanted to learn from her, and then eventually maybe perhaps even do this. Because remember, he purchased the K-bar knife while he was in Pennsylvania. He purchased the balaclava mask while he was up there, and I believe also the backpack. So he's just graduated with his master's degree. Everything should be up in the up and up right now. He's not going through the problems that he was having at WSU. In fact, we found out that only like 2% of people that apply for those positions of the TA position get selected. And so he was one of the few that were selected, and yet he's still purchasing these items. So it's not about, everybody just compiling on him. It's more of, he's probably had these feelings, these thoughts, these sensations. I think he's looked at and even written down, and it came out in this documentary, that he was looking for somebody to relate to him. And I've talked about it. I think that, if he's having these feelings and he's making and reaching out and making contact with some of these ex-cons who have committed violent crimes, there's a good chance they have some of the same feelings. And now he has somebody to relate to. And he's probably getting excited, and the other persons are getting excited, reliving the crimes that they've committed. And he's wanting to have that feeling and understanding. And so, and that's just a small piece of it. But at the end of the day, I can't say that the problems he was having at WSU as a TA and all these other things were the reasons why he committed this crime, when he started purchasing a bunch of these items when his life was at an all-time high in his life. So yeah, I think that it's a multifaceted situation as far as why he did it, the motive behind it. The only person that really knows that is him. Everybody else can guesstimate or wonder, and some people may get closer than others as far as pieces and parts of it, but the whole truth and the whole reason why and all that, he's the only one that probably knows. And to an extent, he probably doesn't know himself, 100%. And so he's just a crazy person. Crazy people don't know why they do the things that they do sometimes. And I think he was well aware of it. I mean, you can see it in his searches: psychopath, sociopath. I think he was trying to blend in. And I don't think he was trying to blend in just so that maybe perhaps he can meet new people or be friends. It's so that he doesn't become a suspect. It's so that people don't suspect him of being somebody capable of committing a crime like this. In fact, that's what the defense is complaining about now. They're talking about, hey, he's not going to have an emotional effect when you talk about the victims, when you show the bloody pictures, when you show the crime scene. He has no emotion. He shows no remorse. So they're concerned about his optics and the way he looks. Obviously, he was concerned about those same things then, which is why he was doing the searches he was doing. To me, it's an easy way to put, to tie in those dots. All right. Let's see. I truly believe since day one that he has full control over his legal team down to every single court filing. What do you think? I think it's possible, but, Ann Taylor is now, what is she? She's representing Skylar Mead, I think is his name. Another high profile case. And I don't know much about it. I know that this guy plotted some sort of, I guess they surprise a prison guard or a police officer that was transporting him to the hospital, and they ended up killing him. And until he's up for the death penalty. And I do know that in this case here, there's a lot of evidence against the suspect. And I know that Ann Taylor and Skylar Mead didn't do a plea. They stayed silent and let the judge enter a plea for him. So if that sounds familiar, it probably is. But I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of Bryan Kohberger input into his case. You know, they also mentioned that he's kind of hard to deal with, right? Let's see. It's multifaceted. I was just trying to simplify for the few character eyes have offered. I have so much to say about this case. Oh, I hear you. I hear you. Do you have concerns about your home address or the personal information being expressed online? Use the link below for promo code. Get 5% off. This is for Data Seal, guys. If you're concerned about your personal information out there, whether it's your name, phone number, date of birth, address, religious preference, voting preference, those type of things, check out Data Seal. They'll hook you up. Get a 5% discount. Thoughts on how or why these girls were the ones on his radar? How they crossed this path? I mean, that could be one of a number of ways. You know, why a person chooses their victims. In this scenario, I mean, you look at the girls that he was Google searching, the ones that were on his phone and what they were wearing. You know, he had one girl who was giving him attention, but it wasn't enough. I mean, she was Korean, I believe, and the girls that were on his phone were all blonde and brunettes and Caucasian females, from what I could tell. And it sounded like he had a type, and I think maybe perhaps the type of girls that these young ladies were, you know, very attractive young ladies, were ladies that he could never get, and maybe that's why he chose them. And when he crossed paths with them, who knows? You know, it sounds like it was probably after that Grove party. You know, he may have gone somewhere to pick up something, gone to the store, and for whatever reason, or however reason, he just crossed paths with him that day. But it sounds like it happened around that time. Looks like a Band-Aid to me. Not, oh yeah. On the pinky, yeah. It looks like there's something there. I think it's a Band-Aid. Let's see. Not Idaho Bundy. He's a nothing burger. Yeah. Thank you for $5 super chat. Yeah, he's definitely that. He's not Idaho Bundy. I think he was pissed when he went to the room and Kaylee was in there and couldn't do what he wanted to. See, that makes sense, right? Because like there are two victims in this scenario that have different injuries. You have Kaylee, who we know got blows to the face, and according to Steve, she would not have lived if, you know, those blows to her face would have taken her life as well. And we have Ethan, whose legs were carved. So it sounds like to me that the people, Kaylee and Ethan, had those injuries probably out of anger and stuff because they interrupted whatever fantasy he may have had. Right. And so I think that plays a huge role in it. And so that kind of tells you, and what probably tells me a little bit, is that perhaps Maddie was the actual and the target, and Kaylee and everyone else was collateral damage. You know, Dateline made it seem like a huge fight ensued between Xana and Kohberger. So I don't know. But I do think that obvious there was a lot of hatred and anger in this man. And for him to have carved something, and I wonder what he carved, because, I mean, you use the term carve. That's not just like slicing. That's not cutting. When you carve something, there's purpose, there's intent, there's meaning behind it. You know, what are you carving? Is it a name, a symbol? You know what I mean? I wonder what that is. I wonder if that's going to play a huge role in this case. Let's see. Do you think the dad could be involved? Like, why the calls to the dad? I don't think he's involved in that manner. I think his son was just manipulating him. I think his son was trying to manipulate his dad and his mom into thinking that he was not capable of doing this. He called him that morning. They spoke to him before 911 and everything else was aware of. And yeah, I think it was all part of his manipulation, to be 110% honest with you. His life was falling apart. I don't deny that was the case. I just don't think that was the only that was the reason why he committed this crime, was because his life was falling apart. Because he was purchasing some of these items before his life was falling apart. In fact, he was purchasing these items when his life was at an all-time high. graduating with a master's degree, being recommended to the PhD program, getting selected for the TA as a TA. So, you're going to not just get your studies covered, but you're also going to get paid while you're out there. He was so close to being Dr. Kohberger, yet he was still purchasing these items. He was, planning what he was eventually going to have, what he was eventually going to do. So, I don't know. What did he plagiarize? I don't know. I'm not aware of him plagiarizing anything. That would be news to me. What are your thoughts about the impressions of the killer sitting on the chair in Xana's room? That's interesting, right? I mean, I think that he just took the life of 4 people. He carved into the legs of a very large man. Ethan was not a small man. He was a large man. I think he was like 6'5". So, he's probably just took a step, sat down, took a breath, probably looked at the scene that he created, and then got out of there quickly. But it's weird. Kohberger cutting up Ethan's leg is telling. He definitely was jealous of Ethan because he can get a girlfriend, and Kohberger never had a girlfriend. That's true. Nobody's ever come forward saying that they were Bryan Kohberger's girlfriend. Hey, Dr. Vona, what's going on? I got to get you on the show. Maybe Friday. My Friday's cleared up. I know your schedule might be clearing up. If you can before Friday, that'd be great. But if not, I can get you on Friday. I want to talk to you about this Dateline special. He was probably saw her through the window while driving by. I mean, that's a good possibility. My thing was, and I said this a long time ago, right? I said that it sounds like to me that he was looking for the perfect crime to happen. And this was before we found out that he purchased these items before he moved out there. That even adds to that. Now, the perfect crime requires the perfect victims, and I think he was, I put it out there. I said, I think he went out one night looking for the biggest party with some attractive young ladies, and that's how he chose who he wanted. I think he wanted to commit a crime against people that have wronged him, but also against a crime that would create a high profile case. So he had delusions of grandeur, and he talked about investigating high profile cases. So high profile cases were on the back of his mind. He may not, when he said that to his friends that, I want to investigate high profile cases, he'd already bought the K-bar knife. He'd already bought the mask. He'd already purchased a bunch of things. And so he's not going to say, I want to commit high profile crimes. Obviously you're not going to say that to somebody. And so I think he may have been deflecting of what he really meant by saying, I want to investigate high profile crimes. And in reality, I think he wanted to commit high profile crimes. He wanted to be the Ted Bundys or a Zodiac killer or the what is it? The Jack the Ripper, somebody that never got caught type of thing. Right. So to me, I think there's a possibility there that's what he probably meant, was that he wanted to create high profile crimes. And if you're going to do that, your targets have to be specific. You're looking for young, attractive young ladies. Multiple victims usually brings in a crowd as well. And so that way, that's the reason why, like when he passed by and he saw multiple vehicles out there, it probably didn't matter. The more cars that were there, and even if he was going in there to like take somebody and then he was, if it were Maddie, take Maddie, abduct her, and then do what he did and then leave her out there at the Walleye Park, it was still going to create a big crime, because now you have one person missing out of a big room of college persons, leaves in the middle of the night, phone there. I mean, kind of sounds a lot like this other murder case that happened. Missing persons case out of Hershey's, Pennsylvania, that happened, I think, while Bryan Kohberger was about 18 years old. Can't remember her name up there. Something with a K. Went missing in the middle of the night after somebody called 911 for a loud noise complaint. Loud noise complaint calls come in, and somebody went in, they believe, through the back sliding glass door, She left her phone and a bunch of things, no sign of anything. We actually talked about it. I'll see if I can find it. I'll see if I can find it again. But this was, we talked about that case, and then we talked about Dana Smithers. And then shortly after that, Dana Smithers' body was found. She was a missing person at that time. And then shortly after that, Bryan Kohberger's family was brought in for grand jury testimony. And so we had looked into Dana Smithers and this other kid. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. If somebody in the live chat has it, please remind me. But yeah, somebody called a 911 call, and I think like her boyfriend ended up getting arrested or something of that nature. And she was all pissed off and a bunch of other things. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, she just disappears, never seen again. And to this day, I can't think of who it was for the life of me. Let's see. Why do you think he carved Ethan's legs? Well, that's what was said in the documentary, and that they even emphasized the term carved. I think it's because he stood in the way of women he wanted, in my opinion, literally, possibly. Let's see. Daniel looked up the song by Britney Spears. He was listening. I went through a few lyrics and found one of her song, the picture of Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. Wait a minute. With the lyrics, and found one that is her song. Interesting. Wonder if Bryan Kohberger saw that. Maybe why he likes it. Maybe that's what he was looking up. Patrick Bateman, and that's how he found the song. Thinks he was after all of them. It's possible. The knife sheath was under Maddie Mogen, proof that she was taken off the bed. Not necessarily. So we do know that there was a lot of movement on that bed, right? Because Kaylee was in the corner, and so beds are pretty soft. So if you move around a lot, it's very easy for, like, especially if he put the knife sheath on the bed, and then he got on top of the bed or on top of like Maddie at one point, he would have had to get over her to get to Kaylee. That's going to push down into the bed, leave an impression, and then the knife sheath can get in there. And then as he gets off, it comes up, and as it comes up, the knife sheath goes underneath. So I think that it was left by accident. I wonder what made them use carved versus cut, etc. It felt like it had to not only be severe, but a marking. As soon as I'm typing this, you just said it. I was going to say, I think they used the term carved because there's an intent there. There's something there. Dr. Gary said he suspected carved might play into experimentation and could have possibly led to like scribes and more. Maybe. That's a good point. So if he lost 100 pounds, he has to have lots of skin under the clothes, or did he have surgery to take care of it? Maybe that's why he pushed the girl away, because he has body issues. No, actually, he took care of that. We had a video that not too long, like I think it was broken by Howard Blum on an airmail article that he had a lot of flappy skin, and that he had to get it taken care of, and he had skin surgery. Big Blue brought up a party trick that Bryan Kohberger used to be able to do. It's quite hilarious. I recommend you go find it. BK is this long ago. Hold on. BK planned this long ago. Midnight runs, post about lack of emotion. Yep. Okay. Understanding why they reject and plays into it. I agree. I might have screenshots from Google Earth from the apartments at 500 Queen Road on 7/17/2022. If that's his car, he was surveilling, stalking that day, July 17th. Send it to me, please, Missy. Please, if you do have them, please send them to me at drunkturkeyshow@gmail.com. I appreciate it. Let's see. I'm going to scroll down pretty quick. If you guys have any questions, put a couple of stars there. Paula says, think about it. BK was extra brutal to Ethan. And Kaylee, I think, came across Maddie and Xana as the place they worked. That's possible there, that he was aware of who they were because of where they worked. I might have screenshots. Please message me. You can put them on Discord or email, either or. I'm on all of them. If you haven't get on Discord yet, get on Discord. If you remember, I'll put the link in the description I'll put a link for the Discord in the members post after the show. Go check it out, guys. Appreciate that. Ashley Fugel's case needs to be reopened now that he fantasizes about unconscious victims. I agree, Steph. That's a great point. That is a great point. Let's see. Shelly Stewart says, yes, that case, in my opinion, he was involved. Yeah. I can't remember which case. Are you talking about the one in Hershey's, Pennsylvania? Man, I'm going to have to go through my videos to figure out which one it was. Let's see. Steph says, I agree with Dr. Vona that he is not an incel. He hates women, but is attracted to them. He only wants to have relationships with unconscious women where he can be violent with them. I think that's possible. I mean, that's possible. I think there's an element of fear he likes, right? I mean, you look at the break-in with Miss Young, or Miss Ko, I'm sorry, not Young Ko. He did that to scare her. I mean, he moved some things around, lined things up. I mean, that's obviously to scare somebody. So I think there's an element of fear putting into people or into women that he enjoys. I think he enjoys the fact that they ran to him and seeked him, right? And so it could be he was watching her, he was videotaping her. Can you really trust Howard, though? I mean, Howard's not been completely wrong on things. He's gotten some things wrong, but he's not perfect. I don't think. I think if the expectation is that Howard needs to be 100% accurate or right, I think that's a pretty high expectation. I'm not right all the time. When I'm wrong, I admit it. I own up to it. But I've not been right all the time. And neither has Howard. And Howard's brought it up, and he's talked to me about it. Say, hey, I've made some mistakes, but I've been completely wrong. And he's owned up to it. And so, he put out a Twitter saying, hey, my apologies if Bryan Kohberger and Catherine Ramsland haven't been in contact with each other, physically, like them in contact with each other since his arrest, then that's one thing. Now, could it be a case of schematics where she's not talking to Bryan Kohberger personally, but talking to him through his parents? I don't know. I mean, if you read what she said that, she used the term past tense. She said that Bryan Kohberger has not contacted her since, and she does not, say anything to his family members as far as advising them on things, meaning present tense, meaning that she still talks to him. So I don't know. I mean, I haven't talked to Dr. Ramsland myself to say, oh, yeah, she's saying this or that. And at the end of the day, I don't think if Dr. Ramsland is writing about Bryan Kohberger, she's not writing about him because he's innocent. That's not her game. That's not her genre. She's writing about him because he did it, right? And in the end, those books help figure out why people do what they do. And they also help law enforcement catch these people, etc. And so I understand the optics behind it from a certain certain point. But, to me, she hasn't gone out there and said Bryan Kohberger is innocent. In fact, she's gone out there and said other things like, people ask me how I didn't see Bryan Kohberger right in front of me. And it's hard. These predators prey on people and they manipulate things, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what she said 3 months ago in an interview. So to me, it's quite the opposite. I think she does think he did it. She's not running out here saying, innocent until proven guilty or anything like that. She's keeping silent on it. And we'll see. But I'm gonna ask Howard about it tomorrow. We're gonna talk about Dr. Ramsland and what he said and what he meant, if he still thinks the things that he thinks. But at the end of the day, like I mentioned before with BTK didn't contact police. He didn't murder the people that he murdered because he was going to contact police and antagonize them. I think that's the word I've been looking for all dang night. Antagonize. He that wasn't his plan. That's not why he was trying to commit these murders, to antagonize police and media and everybody. And he had some sexual feelings and stuff. The antagonization of the media and people and law enforcement was another way of him reliving the crime. Another way of him feeling smarter and stronger than everybody else. And if you're Bryan Kohberger and you feel that you're smarter than everybody and you belittle women, I mean, wouldn't Dr. Ramsland be somebody that he would try to manipulate? Maybe perhaps just try to grasp her attention to the case. in efforts and hopes to get off on the fact that she couldn't figure it out. I think that's a high possibility there, but we don't know. We'll ask those questions and we'll talk about it tomorrow. Let's see. Yes, the one in Pennsylvania. Yeah, I can't think of her name for the life of me. A young lady, too. I think she was like 21 years old. She was a bartender. And the crazy thing is that Bryan Kohberger's sister attended college like 40 minutes away from Hershey, Pennsylvania, I believe. And she was, I think she was graduating around the time that this young lady disappeared. And so Bryan and from what I understand is the location in which a lot of those students, I can't remember the college that his sister went to, but they've frequently visited the bar area. See, I had one of her friends, her best friend, on the show, and I feel so bad. Her name was Holly. Her best friend was Holly, and she was on the show, and she talked about her friend and her disappearance and the possibility of Bryan Kohberger. A lot of people brushed it off because Bryan Kohberger was 18, but Bryan Kohberger was writing some pretty horrific things at 18 and on the influence of heroin and a bunch of other things around that time. That's when he also stole his sister's phone and things like that. So, he wasn't like a model citizen when he was 18. Far from it. Far from it. Let's see. Now that his former colleague is going to be called as a witness, is she? I don't know. In the documentary, or I was watching actually Law and Crime, and they were bringing up a couple of different videos from prior hearings, and the prosecutor, oh God, what was his name? It's not Thompson, it's the other guy. Can't think of his name. He was saying something to the effect that they don't intend on bringing classmates of Bryan Kohberger to talk about him, that they have much stronger evidence against them. And so it sounds like they're going to just show, look, this is how he did it, and this is how you can't be anybody else. And I don't think they're going to go into a lot of the details. From what I understand, we'd probably be there for months because there's so much against this guy. And it doesn't sound like they need it. You can't be perfect if you weren't there. 100%. 100%. Dan, you really rocked this case and your dedication. Thank you for explaining the things and having comments. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Great show tonight. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to make sure we don't got any more live chats or super chats in here. Nye, there we go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And Chloe says she don't think she'll be caught. And here it is. Thank you, Artworks, Courtney Stouffer. There we go. That is who it was. Go look up her case. Backsliding glass door. Police called that night. Missing out of the blue. Nobody knows where she went. Phone, everything was left behind. No sign of broken entry or forced entry. None of those things. And so look it up. Courtney Stouffer. Yeah. A lot of people say they don't believe this is first crime. I would look into that case. And also Dana Smithers, which his family has already talked about. The second selfie proved to the world ghoulish. Thank you, Jules. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think so too. Yes, that case, in my opinion, he was involved. There's a good chance. It's a good chance. Well, guys, that's all I got for you guys tonight. I want to say thank you, guys. I'll be back on tomorrow at about 11:30 Central, 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 on the West Coast. We have Howard Blum on a tell-all. You guys don't want to miss that. We'll see you guys next